This demo uses version 2018.3 of the UiPath RPA platform, which includes Studio, Robot, and Orchestrator. It will demonstrate RPA capabilities used by Lufthansa to reduce processing times by 80%, errors to zero, and gain a 35% increase in work capacity. Similarly, CenturyLink is using our OCR and computer vision for over 1,000 error-free daily transactions across ERP systems, resulting in higher cycle times and lower costs. While UiPath can certainly be leveraged to automate one-time migration tasks, the true value of RPA is realized by automating repetitive processes. In the second part of the large-scale data migration scenario, we'll show you how UiPath can be used to extract large amounts of information from different sources and distribute it to a variety of systems. Follow-up from a typical conference or marketing campaign can include a large number of contacts that need to be validated and put into a CRM system, a lead nurturing system, and others. In our scenario today, you'll see how UiPath can take data from business cards, handwritten notes, and Excel tables and migrate that information into Salesforce and HubSpot, thus reducing the amount of time marketing teams have to spend on this repetitive task. UiPath is a platform product company and does not provide implementation services. Accordingly, this demo shows the creation of workflow automation with capabilities the use case requires, not a full RPA implementation lifecycle. The persona is an RPA developer, someone with advanced RPA developer certification from UiPath Academy and a year of experience. This persona is capable of driving all levels of completion. So I'll put my process developer hat on and start building the process using a combination of API and UI automation. First, we need to ensure that all the assets are available to us. Let me click on this folder here. Within this folder, we have an Excel file with thousands of contacts in it, scanned handwritten notes, and scanned copies of business cards. Our automation will initially combine all of this into the lead data Excel file. Then it will add all the data to our key sales and marketing systems. We can approach this automation in two ways. First, fully attended. A user can trigger the automation from their desktop and run it entirely on their machine, though integrated with Orchestrator. Second, a combination of attended and unattended. The automation is triggered by the user from their desktop. The user provides input information to the robot, and the robot adds the lead data to queues in Orchestrator. Unattended robots then pick up this lead information from queues and process it, notifying the user when the job is complete. For the purposes of this demo, we'll take the first approach of attended automation. We'll open UiPath Studio and create a new flowchart document in my project. There's UiPath Studio. Click on New, Flowchart, and give it a name and create it. Flowcharts are a good way to structure the process by componentizing it end to end. As a best practice, we'll add an initialization block that will get the folder information as well as initialize variables and such that we need to use in the automation. In the activities pane here on the left, I can see a full list of activities available to me. Out of the box, there are over 300 pre-built activities available. I need to drag and drop a sequence activity to this flowchart that contains my initialization steps. It's right here in my recently used. We'll drag and drop it. Let's double click on the sequence to get started. First, we'll have the user choose the folder where their files are located. So we'll pull it in a folder activity that will take user input when process is triggered. This time, I'll use search to find the folder. There we go. There's a select folder activity right here, and we'll drag and drop that. We also want to store the folder location in a variable so we can reference it later in the flow. I can do this in two ways. First, let's click on the output value folder in the properties here. Once I click there, I can press Control K to automatically create a variable. Let's give it a name. The second way is by clicking on the Variables tab down here. Now you'll notice that the folder variable that I just created appeared here. Let's change the scope of that to the entire lead flowchart instead of just the sequence, because we'll be needing this folder information across our entire automation. I can also set the default folder here if necessary. Now, one of the steps in our process is to upload lead information into HubSpot, since that's our lead nurturing tool. This will be done using UI automation, for which we first need to log into HubSpot. Let's build a reusable component library for our login process. For this, we need to create a new project of type library. We can go to Start and Library. Here's one I've created for our demo already. In this scenario, we'll use the browser recording function to record our login steps. Let's click up here on Recording and Web. It'll navigate us to a web page. Here, I can click the record button directly, or first, in order to ensure my automation is robust, I will actually want to open the browser. And click on the window here, and it automatically asks me to confirm the URL. In this case, this is the page that I want my automation to open, so I'll go ahead and click OK. Next, I can do one of two things. I can do individual click and type activities against each of these fields, or I can record a series of actions. Let's try the recording method. I'll click on Record, click on Email address, and type the desired value for my login. Next, I hit Enter, click on the next field, which is Password, and enter my password. This, however, I don't want everybody to see. So I'm going to change it to type password, in which case it will not show the text that I'm typing. Hit enter again, and it'll store the password as part of our automation. And lastly, I'll go ahead and click login. Now I can just hit escape, and my automation will be complete. I can save and exit and go back to the window. Here you'll notice that it took every single part of my recording and created separate activities for it. The input activity and type password activity, as well as the click button, the click login button activity. The next thing I want to do is make sure that my automation is robust. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add a try catch block to catch a specific exception. Let's search for try here. We've got a try catch block right here. I'm going to drag and drop it up here above my web scope. And then I'm going to drag and drop this entire web piece into my try block. Once that's done, I want to catch a very specific exception. So I go ahead and add catches, and I'll choose my UiPath core selector not found exception. If we hit this exception, I just want us to ignore the failure and keep going. We can directly run this workflow from here, or we can debug it. Let's debug this process. We'll click on Execute, where you'll notice some options available, such as adding breakpoints or slowing down the process. First, let's click on the input activity and set a breakpoint. Since automation runs too quickly for us to follow, let's slow this process down by 4x so we can follow by clicking on this slow step button. Now let's go ahead and debug this process to see exactly what's going on. You'll notice that each step has a yellow highlight around it as it's executing, so we know exactly which activity is currently running. Output panel on the right shows you a detailed log so you can check each stage of your workflow. You can also add tracing in the workflow to help with debugging, and traces will appear in the output window. On the left is the Properties Inspector panel, available only in debug mode. It displays relevant properties for the active action and the current value of all declared variables in this scope. UiPath simplifies debugging both through real-time proactive validation as well as through a set of tools that can be leveraged for more complex issues. Now that it's ready, we'll go ahead and make this process available to others. Let's click on the Design toolbar and Publish. Typical automations are published to Orchestrator. However, since this is a reusable library component, we'll publish it to a URL from which it can be imported into any project as an activity package. As in any reusable library, version control is available. Workflows using a version of the library have to explicitly upgrade to a new version, ensuring that changes do not affect deployed processes. Once published, this library can be used by anyone that has access to it by installing it from the package manager. Now let's add the login activity to our lead upload process. We'll search for HubSpot and add the login activity to the sequence. The credentials required for logging into HubSpot are stored securely in Orchestrator as a credential asset, which uses AEX 256 encryption. I retrieve those using the get credentials activity, which will store the password as a secure string. So as you can see, I've created the asset named HubSpot and stored the output in two new variables called hub password and hub user. I can add additional variables and initialize steps here in my sequence as well, but for now, let's continue to the first part of our process, which is handwriting recognition. Let's navigate back up to the flowchart by clicking on Lead. Here, you can see the outline of the entire flow. Now we'll add another sequence block. It's important to design your workflow to be as optimized as possible. Here, the process we follow is read in the image with handwritten notes on it, extract the information, and put it into the master Excel file. For this, I first need to open the Excel file. We have an activity for opening an Excel application scope that I'll put into this workflow. Let's give it the path to the Excel. In this case, I'm predefining the name of the file, but it is also equally easy to store as a variable. Iterate through multiple files using a loop, or run the same automation against files from a queue. Next, we need to read the handwriting image and run it through the Vision technology to extract information. For this, we use the Microsoft Vision activity, which is the result of a partnership with Microsoft. You'll notice the integration section in the left navigation. The Microsoft Vision activities are here. Similar to Excel, we need to open the Microsoft Vision scope in order to leverage the various APIs within. Let's add the Microsoft Vision scope and the read handwritten text activities to the flow. Notice the blue warning icons that have appeared next to some of the steps. These indicate validation errors in the workflow. UiPath has a real-time debugging engine that checks for errors while developing workflows. If we hover on it, we can see the detailed error. This activity requires a service URL and subscription key to function. Let's use predefined variables to provide input. The handwriting activity also requires the location to the image. Let's provide that. You'll notice that the blue warnings are gone and this automation is now ready to run. Of course, it won't produce an output yet. We need to extract each of the lines and write them to our Excel file. First, let's read the Excel file to understand how many rows there are to avoid overwriting it. I'll do this with the Excel read range activity, which will return a list of rows from the Excel file. We need to set the output as a variable. Once that's done, let's capture the total number of rows by extracting it from the data table and storing it in a variable. Now we can start iterating through the array and write the information to Excel. UiPath also has a for each activity out of the box that makes it super easy to loop through data. Let's drag that activity into our automation and loop through each item in the handwriting array. Now this is taking each of the items from the handwritten text and writing it to Excel. Due to the visual nature of the UiPath Designer, it's very easy to build out this process. Basic knowledge of a programming language such as VB is sufficient to build complex automation using the UiPath Studio and activities. The second step in our process is to read business card data and write that to our Excel file as well. This is very similar to the previous step, just with different input parameters. Let's switch to the demo flow file that has the complete automated workflow and take a look. Here you'll see the business card scanning process. UiPath provides integrations with many different technologies. For this purpose, we've used the Abby FlexiCapture OCR engine. And the last step in our automation is to take all the data from the Excel file and publish it to Salesforce and HubSpot. First, we need to acquire the Salesforce library from the UiPath Go marketplace. UiPath provides RPA developers with easy access to hundreds of components through the Go marketplace. These components are downloaded directly into Studio where they can be leveraged to quickly build automations. Let's click on the Manage Packages button up here and look for All Packages, Salesforce Activity. There are several activities that show up. The one that we're looking for is the API activity right here. Here, all you have to do is click Install and Save, and this activity will be added to your project. I've built a workflow using this activity already. Let's take a look at it. While this looks a little bit messy, on the right, you'll notice an outline view. It shows us the entire project outline in one compacted view. Within the Salesforce integration, I've performed a few steps. First, I open a Salesforce application scope and connect to my Salesforce account. The second step is to loop through each of the contacts in the Excel file and store the information locally. The third step is a parallel step that creates records in Salesforce using API automation. We check if the account exists in Salesforce already and add it if it doesn't. Then we do the same thing for contact, connecting the account to the contact. And in parallel, we use UI automation to create records in HubSpot. If the contact exists in HubSpot, we just add a note to their record. Otherwise, we go ahead and create that lead. The last step in this workflow is to update each row in the Excel file with account and contact ID, as well as information on whether the account and contact were created. This provides the user with feedback on success or failure of the process so they can handle errors manually. Once the process is complete, I can run it directly from here by clicking the Run button, or publish it to Orchestrator so that everybody in my organization can have access to it. In this case, since I want key stakeholders in the marketing team to use the process, I will publish it by clicking the Publish button. The process can now be deployed to every Orchestrator user. Now that we've built and published the process, we can finally run it. As an end user, I can trigger the process through the UiPath robot. I'll click on the UiPath icon in the Windows tray. This is the robot process, a Windows service which runs the process at hand. In the tray, you'll notice a process called Gartner Demo and a play button next to it. Clicking the play button triggers the process. For the purposes of this demo, this automation is attended in that I have to manually trigger this process. However, we can also have a robot monitor my email to see if any lead information is received and trigger this process automatically. Or in scenarios where multiple people are running this simultaneously, model it as a combination of unattended and attended, where a user triggers a process, the business cards, handwriting images, and Excel files are put into queues, and unattended robots process these items in the background, sending an email to the user when their information has been processed. As an RPA developer, I can run this process directly from Studio as well. Let's do that. I'll go ahead and click the Run button. First and foremost, it'll ask us to choose the path for our files. We'll select Gartner Demo here and click OK. Now you'll notice that the HubSpot login page that we created has loaded, and it's entering our login and password information. In the background, you'll also notice that the Excel file is opening. Each contact is being added to HubSpot through UI automation. We first search for the contact to see if it exists, and if the contact does not exist, we go ahead and create a new contact. In parallel, you'll notice the Excel file is being updated with information from Salesforce. Each of these contacts and accounts is being added to Salesforce if they don't already exist. As you can see, this automation takes minutes to run and can be used by anyone in the company that needs to handle large amounts of data in different systems, especially in cases where they need to copy unstructured data and convert it to structured. While tools like Salesforce and HubSpot provide the ability to import bulk data, a UiPath process is much more sophisticated, and it helps ensure data consistency and quality while minimizing redundancy, tasks where people spend a lot of time manually today. As an example, many customers have used the UiPath platform to automate their marketing processes, including CenturyLink, who handle in excess of 1,000 transactions a day in a Citrix hosted CRM application, saving a costly outsourcing plan, and Lufthansa, who implemented UiPath robots to solve a highly repetitive daily activity requiring two SAP systems and a web application.